That is a perfect collection.
I know.
Magic. That was magic.
Welcome everybody. I'm your host Stuart, but you can call me Santov. And today we have another series that I'm trying to get up and running, Genius Bar, where I will be talking about people who interest me and whose work I'd like to understand more and discuss with other people. It'll mostly be fashion related because that's what I'm mostly interested in. But maybe I'll end up talking about artists that I really enjoy, whether it's music or art, maybe some architecture, whatever I feel like basically. But all with a common theme of people or groups who do amazing work, and I'd like to dive a bit deeper into their work. So for today, for the inaugural episode of this series, I wanted to start off strong, which is why I decided to discuss Walter van Beirendonck. Of course, he's well known as part of the Antwerpen 6 or Antwerp 6, but perhaps he's not as well known as An de Meulemeester or Dries van Noten. But make no mistake, Walter van Beirendonck is, in my opinion, probably one of the more influential designers, one of the most creative designers out there. Now, as I mentioned, Walter rose to fame and prominence in the 1980s, the late 1980s, where he was part of a group of designers and friends known as the Antwerp 6 from the Royal Academy of Arts in Antwerp. And he has been releasing collections since 1983, but only really broke through in 1987. At first, he also used to produce clothing under the label of Wild Lethal Trash between 1993 and 1999, which was part of the Mustang Jeans company. And then afterwards, I think in the early 2000s, he started to release collections under his own name, which he still does today, as well as being the head of design for the Academy in Antwerp. Now, if you've ever seen a collection by Walter van Beirendonck, you will instantly recognize his design philosophy. Bold colors, bold prints, bold text, just a bold attitude. That is what Walter embodies. He has never shied away from expressing his thoughts and bending the norms of what fashion used to be. And you see in his work a lot of referencing to nature, to various ethnic groups, fantasy, to space, to childhood, but most importantly, sexuality. He is often described as the freakiest of designers, and to me his work kind of reminds me of a weird crossover between gimp suits and Teletubbies, if that makes any sense. Now, Walter was one of the first designers who truly broke the confinements of gender and is wildly applauded for blurring the lines between men and women, creating a heterogeneous array of gender-bending pieces. Some of his inspiration probably comes from the photographer Robert Mapplethorpe, who has influenced countless designers over the years, none other than Ralph Simmons, for example. And this kind of catalyzed some of his sexually tinted and fetish-esque work over the years, incorporating rubber, latex, shoes with bejeweled penises, and bold slogans referencing sex and gender, just emblazoned across items. Besides the strong influence of sex, sexuality, and freedom in his work, another part that is key to understanding the philosophy behind the aesthetic, or the aesthetic itself, of Walter van Beirendonck is, of course, masks. The obsession with masks has been prevalent and prominent and obvious in all of his collections. As I mentioned earlier, the influences of Walter are strongly related to sex, but not necessarily only. So mask would be in inspiration of BDSM, but also various ethnic groups such as African bozo masks or whoopee cushions for face masks, warped animal beaks, whatever. And other oversized headwear are always present in some way, shape, or form in his collections. Now, this is kind of a result of his interest in fashion as a mechanism for fantasy and how you can change and adapt yourself to be something else and someone else. They represent the love of fantasy and escape in some way. Now, not only did Walter van Beirendonck obsess over masks, but also he was very infatuated with the future. There is still in some collections a aura of cyber, of future, but it was most prominently visible in his earlier work under the moniker of W&LT, Wild Lethal Trash, which was also amplified by the fact that Walter in the 90s was probably the first designer to implement an online presence, a website for his collections and showcasing his collections. The futuristic approach that Walter has taken over the years is truly avant-garde, and not only in regards to his collections, but also in the way he presents them and how he exposes his work to the world. But underneath all these innovative, fetish-esque and exuberant garments lies a common theme of political activism. Walter has never shied away from expressing his thoughts and his morals and ethics through his fashion, which is something I really appreciate, whether it promotes a war against racism in his Fall/Winter 14 show, or safe sex and AIDS awareness, which was prevalent in his 98 collection, or a plea to stop terror and terrorizing in his Fall/Winter 06 collection, which was then reissued after the Charlie Hebdo shootings in Paris for his Fall/Winter 15 collection. Yet with all of these deep and heavy undertones of political activism, there remains a very playful, joyful, childlike aura in his work. Perhaps because of his own fondness of toys and colors, which was interesting because he even filled the front row seats of his Fall/Winter 99 show with all kinds of toys that were his most beloved toys. An amazing picture, to say the least. Besides all of the more deeper layers of his work, the most prominent characteristic of Walter van Beirendonck is obviously the use of bold patterns and wild color schemes and color combinations. And it is this juvenile, colorful aesthetic that is so necessary in fashion, in my opinion, with a tendency of people opting for a more toned down, monochromatic aesthetic for a lot of high fashion houses or brands. But fashion and everything else needs something or someone like Walter van Beirendonck, who promotes this inner childlike desire and inner childlike expression, which is so important for him as well, to experiment and to give into this inner child that we all have. Now, this was a very interesting topic for me to discuss because I'm a huge fan of Walter van Beirendonck, and which is why I think it was so important for me and for what I appreciate in fashion to make this video and kind of talk about why I think this is such an amazing designer and his whole philosophy. So that will conclude today's video. Thank you all for watching once again. I hope you like this kind of video, which in all honesty is not that different from most of my videos, but who knows. As always, Thank you for watching, and deuces. See you next time.